Now, of course, you don't have to be going back to school or a student. This video is intended for anyone searching for their first or perhaps their next iPad. And I think it makes the most sense to start off with Apple's most popular iPad. And of course, that is the classic 9th gen iPad. So let's get started. And now, of course, perhaps what makes this guy the most popular of the iPads is its price tag. Its starting price tag is $329, and for that price, you'll get 64 gigabytes of storage, which I guess it's okay if you do want to use cloud storage to store some of your media and your pictures and your documents. But of course, what makes this iPad so unique is its classic design. Still comes in the space gray as well as the silver color options. On the back, you'll still see that it has that singular 12 megapixel camera. Along the top, you have the power button. Along the right side, you have the volume controls. On the left side, you have the smart connectors that allows you to connect to a smart keyboard. Along the bottom, you have that signature lightning port that could also be used to charge not only your iPad, but as well as your Gen 1 Apple Pencil if you do like that look. Along the front, it does have a 12 megapixel ultra wide webcam that works perfectly with center stage. And along the bottom, you'll still notice that signature home button that also serves as Touch ID. Really, the biggest turnoff with this iPad are the thick bezels on the top and the bottom. But again, it serves that classic design. The screen itself is a 10.2-inch Retina display with True Tone technology. What True Tone is just that it'll adjust to the lighting environments around you. So if you are viewing content at night, it will automatically adjust. If you do want to turn it off, you can turn it off. One thing that I do have to mention about the screen itself is that it is not a fully laminated display. So you might start to notice some separation between the glass and the content you're interacting with, whether it just be with your finger or if you are using an Apple Pencil to interact with your iPad. And I guess that's just one of the reasons why it is the budget option and why they're able to get that price point so low compared to some of the other models. And this Gen 9 iPad inherits the A13 Bionic chip that was first introduced with the iPhone 11. And actually, that's not so much of a bad thing. I was interacting with my mom's iPhone 11 over the summer break, and it was just as fast and responsive as any other iPad. The only thing you might notice that it does only have 60 hertz as far as the refresh rate, which is the same for the majority of the iPads on the lineup. I don't really notice that sort of thing, but that is one of its features. So basically, I really do think this is a great iPad, not only for students, for anyone really. As we continue to go down the list, through this lineup here, you'll start to notice that they all have the same thing in common. iPad OS. So pretty much they're capable of all of the same things. It really comes down to the form factor that you prefer. So I guess we'll just keep trucking along based on the price point of the base model. So up next would be the iPad mini. And the iPad mini was introduced earlier this year. And actually it was at the end of 2021, so not 2022. Time's a blur in COVID years, right? But it was introduced in, I believe, in September of 2021, where we got this new refresh design. Again, the base model is going to come with only 64 gigabytes of storage, and it starts off at $499. What's super cool about these iPad minis is that they come with 4 unique colors. This, of course, being the purple. You also got space gray, the all-new Starlight, as well as the pink. Me, personally, I really wish they kept silver in the lineup because it's just a classic, iconic color for iPads and all of Apple's products, really. What makes this guy particularly appealing to so many is that you can actually hold it with one hand. It kind of has that larger iPhone feel, and for some, they might like that, and for others, they might like something a little bigger. So that's one of the deciding factors between choosing between the iPad mini and the iPad Air. And since they are so similar, we might as well just talk about them together. iPad mini has an 8.3-inch Liquid Retina display, while the iPad Air has a 10.9-inch Liquid Retina display. And you'll find that the iPad Air comes in 5 color options. So you have that space gray, you have the purple, the pink, and this new color option, which is called blue. And the iPad Air starts off at $599 versus the $499 for the iPad mini, which now things are getting a little pricey, and for both models that is for only 64 gigabytes of internal storage, which I think that is trash. You get 4 times the amount for an additional $150, and you'll get 256 gigabytes of storage. For some, that might just be too many. I really think there should be something right along the middle to appeal to all users, because if you don't want to outgrow your device, the 64 gigabytes of storage might be too low. Of course, we've already discussed there are plenty of cloud options. There's iCloud, OneDrive, Dropbox, whatever your cloud service of choice is. You could store some of those things there if you do want to keep your iPad for a longer period of time. But let's take a little tour of both of the iPads while we're here. And both of the iPads, you'll find that they both have power button, which also serves as Touch ID sensor. But the iPad mini also has its volume controls along the top, where the iPad Air has them along the sides. And along the back, you'll find that it also has a single 12 megapixel webcam, USB-C charging port along the bottom, and they both support the second generation Apple Pencil, which magnetically attaches to your iPad. And then as far as the screen themselves, they're practically the same. They both have a 12 megapixel ultra wide camera, liquid retina displays that reach up to 500 nits of brightness, and unlike the classic iPad, these are fully laminated and you won't notice any separation between the glass and your content. Now, the biggest distinguishing factor as far as performance between these two devices is that the Air itself has an M1 chip processor, while the iPad mini has an A15 Bionic chip, which is the same one that is found currently on iPhone 13. And as we mentioned before, that's really not that big of a deal because they're all capable of running all of the same apps and have the same battery life performance. But where they're slightly different are the accessories. We've already mentioned that they're able to use an Apple Pencil, but the Air is capable of attaching to a Smart Folio keyboard or Magic Keyboard, while the Mini itself is just able to use the standard Smart Folio keyboard. But iPad mini still has mouse and keyboard support via Bluetooth, so if you do have any third-party options from the Apple Store or Amazon, those will work just fine. So it really comes down to size, right? Do you want a 10.9-inch display, or do you want a mini size 8.3-inch display that could fit in one hand? But if we were to sideline all 3 of these options, we still have one member missing of the iPad family, and it is actually my recommended iPad for both students and anyone in general. Now, this iPad Pro truly revolutionized the design of Apple products since 2018. It was the first introduction to this boxy design, as well as an all-screen display that we now see not only in the iPads as we've shown you, but we see this boxy design both in our iPhones as well as our MacBooks. Yes, of course, there's a 2021 version of the iPad Pro, which I'll leave linked down below, but it is super expensive, which is why I can't recommend it, and which is why I still use this iPad Pro 4 years later as my main iPad. And as I mentioned, it was released in 2018. It started off with 64 gigabytes of internal storage. It uses USB-C to charge, and it does have Apple Pencil and Magic Keyboard support as far as accessories. The display itself is also a liquid retina display, but has support for Pro Motion. And basically that just means that it can run up to 120 Hz depending on the task you're performing to conserve battery life. It was the first iPad to bring Face ID to the iPad, while the rest still use Touch ID. Basically, it is the same camera technologies found in the front and the back. The only difference being is that the front 12 megapixel webcam is not ultra wide, so it does not support center stage, which is kind of a bummer, but it is newer technology that you've seen trickle down to these other iPads. And the best part, the bestest part is that you could find this refurbished version on the Apple Store for $519, and that's for the 64 gigabyte version. If you want the 256 gigabyte version, that's $599, which brings it right in line with the iPad Air, which I really think is a great bargain. 256 can feel like overkill. I don't think I've even gotten halfway point with this iPad, but that's partly the reason why I've been able to keep it and hold on to it for over 4 years. Honestly, all iPads will go ahead and last you several years. The only difference being is if you go ahead and you break it, you break the screen, or again, if you run out of internal storage. That's why that starting configuration for internal storage is so important and vital when you're first deciding and choosing an iPad. Other than that, you do just want to pick the size that's going to work best for you, work best in your hands. Are you a Touch ID fan, or do you prefer to have a physical home button? Honestly, to wrap up our conversation, you won't find a lack of performance on any of these different chipsets. As I mentioned, my go-to device, my favorite, is still that 2018 iPad Pro, which is that A12Z Bionic chip that was introduced in 2018. And if you could really find this refurbished, and I took a look, there's several on the Apple Store, but if you do want to find it secondhand on, let's say, Facebook Marketplace, and it's in good condition, you get a better price, I would totally go for it. They're all capable of running iPadOS 15, so they're all equal contenders as far as performance. Go ahead and leave your comments down below on which iPad you currently have, or which iPad is your favorite. I'd love to chat with you down there. While you're there, don't forget to hit that like button on your way out, subscribe if you haven't, and until next time, I'll see you.